Xyra drifts through the silence of space, her fingers resting lightly on the controls of her sleek patrol craft. Her shift has been uneventful, the same endless black, the same distant stars, the same dull routine she knows by heart. She yawns, stretching her arms, trying to shake the creeping fatigue that comes with too many hours in deep space. Alone, her ship glides effortlessly through the void, scanning for anomalies, but finding nothing unusual until the moment her radar pings. At first, it is just a blip, a faint signal at the edge of her range, easily dismissed as stray debris or a false reading. But then the signal sharpens, stabilizes. Her instruments confirm a structure floating deep in the void, motionless, unpowered. Her breath catches in her throat as she expands the scan parameters. The ship is massive, easily 10 times the size of her own. It is ancient, its hull battle-scarred, its structure unmistakably warlike. But that is not what sends a chill through her veins. It is the classification that flashes across her screen: unknown vessel class, possible human origin. Her heart slams against her ribs. She stares unblinking at the data feed. Her people do not speak of humans, not seriously, not as anything more than myths and cautionary tales. They were legends, figures of ghost stories, meant to warn young pilots of the dangers of arrogance. It is said they burned too bright, that they spread too fast, that they challenged the wrong enemies, and were wiped from existence long before her own species claimed dominion over the stars. The Great War was never recorded in detail, only whispered about in secret among the oldest scholars and the most paranoid commanders. The only truth that remains is that humanity is gone extinct, erased. Except there is a human ship right in front of her. Her hands hover over the controls. Instinct tells her to report it immediately. Protocol is clear: any unidentified relics of the old wars must be marked and retrieved by the Fleet Intelligence Division. But something inside her hesitates. She knows what will happen if she calls it in. The ship will be seized, its secrets buried, its existence denied. And she will be interrogated, possibly silenced, if she learns too much. Her people have always been careful about controlling information. Xyra exhales, slowly staring at the floating derelict. She cannot look away. Her mind spins with questions. If this ship has survived, then what else remains? Were humans truly wiped out, or had they simply disappeared into the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return? The thought makes her skin prickle. She taps a command, opening a private channel and running an independent deep scan. If she is going to make a decision, she needs more information. The results make her blood run cold. The ship is not entirely dead. There is power, faint pulsing, like the last dying embers of a fire. Some systems are still operational, buried deep within the wreckage. And then another reading flashes across her screen. Life signs. Xyra's breath catches. She reads the data again, convinced she must be mistaken. But the results are clear: someone or something is still alive aboard that ship, barely hanging on, in a state of deep stasis or suspended animation. Her fingers tighten around the controls, her mind racing. If there is a human in there, if there is even the slightest chance that someone has survived for all these centuries, then everything she has ever been told is a lie. She swallows, hard hands shaking. She is standing on the edge of something massive, something dangerous, something she might not be able to walk away from. She has two choices: turn back now, erase the scan report, nothing, pretend she never saw the ship, or she can move closer, investigate, see the truth with her own eyes, even if it destroys everything she thought she knew. She knows what she should do. She knows the safe choice, the logical choice. But as her ship inches forward toward the forgotten vessel drifting in the dark, Xyra already knows she has made her decision. Xyra grips the controls of her patrol craft, her mind racing, her heart pounding against her ribs. She should turn back, she should report this. But she does not move. Her eyes are locked onto the silent, colossal wreck drifting before her, its metal hull pockmarked with scars of ancient battles, its surface dull and lifeless, yet something about it feels wrong, not just old, but preserved, like a secret meant to be forgotten. Her instruments confirm the life sign, faint but stable, buried somewhere deep inside the ship. Her breath comes in slow, steadying gulps as she adjusts her trajectory, inching closer. Her ship glides through the darkness, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the derelict vessel. The markings along its hull are worn, unreadable, but she can make out the crude angular design so different from the sleek organic ships of her own people. This was built for war, for endurance, for something far greater than herself. Her fingers hesitate over the comm controls. She could send a message, see if anything answers. But that would be reckless. If something is alive aboard, it might not be friendly, worse, her own people might intercept the transmission, and then it would be over. She would never learn the truth. The ship would be taken, buried in some classified archive of things that never happened. Xyra steadies herself. Her training tells her to follow orders. Her instincts tell her to uncover the truth. She moves closer, her scanners sweeping the hull, searching for an entry point. She spots a docking bay, its massive doors half open, frozen in time. She could slip inside, but there is no guarantee her ship will fit. She considers launching a probe, but something in her gut tells her to go in herself. She exhales, fingers tightening on the controls, then she makes her decision. Her ship maneuvers delicately through the opening, her thrusters firing in soft bursts, guiding her into the dark, cavernous hangar. Her lights cut through the dust, swirling in weightless suspension, revealing the skeletal remains of fighter craft, long abandoned, their forms alien yet undeniably human. Every inch of this place screams of a civilization wiped from history, and yet here she is standing at its doorstep. Her ship settles inside Xyra, powers down non-essential systems, leaving only her shields and emergency thrusters active, just in case. She reaches for her helmet, locking it into place. As she prepares to step into history, the airlock hisses around her, then silence. As she drifts out weightless in the ruined human ship, her suit display flickers, mapping the interior in real time. The corridors beyond the hangar are dark, stripped of power, but her scanners still pick up that faint signal deep within. She pushes forward, her boots magnetizing against the floor with each slow, deliberate step. The silence is overwhelming, only the faint hum of her suit systems in her ears. She passes consoles, dead and lifeless panels flickering dimly with the last remnants of energy. The ship feels like a graveyard, but Xyra knows better. Something still breathes within these walls. A mural catches her eye, stretching across an entire corridor depicting figures in battle, humanity. She recognizes their armor, their weapons, the way they stand unyielding against monstrous shapes that loom in the background. Her people are there too. But something is wrong in this version of history. The humans are not the aggressors, they are the defenders fighting against something far worse. Xyra shakes her head. She does not have time for this. She follows her scanners, deeper, navigating through the labyrinth of metal and shadow. The life sign pulses stronger. Now close, she rounds a corner and stops, her breath catching in her throat. Ahead stands a single intact cryopod, its glass frosted over with time, its systems barely clinging to life, and within it a man frozen in time. His face is sharp, his features worn by war, but there is no mistaking what he is. A human. Xyra stares, unable to move, unable to process what she is seeing. The last remnant of a forgotten species, sealed away in the dark, waiting for something or someone to find him. And now here she stands at the threshold of a history she was never meant to know. Xyra stares at the cryopod, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes are seeing. A human, a real human, frozen in time. His face is lined with age, but his body remains preserved, as if he fell asleep only yesterday. The pod is covered in frost, its control panel barely functional, warning lights flickering weakly. She takes a step closer, her breath shallow, her heartbeat hammering against her ribs. Her fingers hover over the controls, hesitating. Everything in her training tells her this is dangerous, that she should not interfere, but the pulse of the life sign is weak, too weak. If she does nothing, he will die, and whatever secrets he carries will die with him. Her people have erased humans from history, but they failed to erase this one, and now she stands on the edge of a decision that could change everything. She takes a slow breath and brushes her fingers across the panel. The display stutters, the ancient system struggling to respond. She reads the status. The pod is in critical condition, power reserves nearly depleted, stasis failing. If she does not act, he will not last more than a few hours. Her mind races with questions. Who is he? Why was he left here? How did this ship survive? And why had her people never spoken of any of it? She glances around the chamber. The walls are covered in more murals, some showing humans standing alongside her kind, others showing them fighting against an enemy that is not hers. The figures are monstrous, vague shapes of darkness, writhing and consuming everything in their path. Xyra swallows hard. Her people have always claimed they were the victors, that they ended the war and brought peace. But this mural tells a different story, one that does not fit the history she was taught. She turns back to the pod, her decision already made. She cannot let him die. She presses a sequence on the panel, overriding the failing systems. The pod hisses, steam venting, as ancient mechanisms struggle to wake the man within. Lights flicker red, then yellow, then green. The glass begins to clear. Xyra takes a step back, pulse racing as the human stirs. His breathing is shallow, his fingers twitch, his eyes flicker open, unfocused, and while he gasps for air, his body convulsing, as if fighting against the weight of centuries. Xyra watches, frozen, unsure if she should help or run. Then his eyes snap to hers, sharp, calculating, filled with something she cannot name. He tries to move, but his limbs fail him. He collapses back against the pod, coughing, his voice hoarse, dry, weak. He speaks his words rough in a language she barely understands, but she recognizes the question, how long? Xyra hesitates. She does not know the exact time, but she knows it has been a long, long time, millennia. She answers, her voice softer than she expects. She expects shock, anger, disbelief, but the human only exhales a bitter laugh, his head tilting back against the pod, his expression unreadable. He does not ask where he is, he does not ask who she is. Instead, his gaze moves past her, scanning the walls, the murals, the ruined remains of his ship. His expression darkens. He does not look confused. He looks like a man who expected this, like someone who already knew how the story would end, and Xyra feels a cold weight settle in her chest. He tries to move again, forcing his body to obey, muscles trembling with effort. Xyra steps forward, instinctively reaching out to steady him. He flinches at first, then allows it, his hands gripping the edge of the pod, knuckles white. His breathing slow, stabilizes. He looks at her again, this time with something different in his eyes. "You should not have woken me," he says, voice still weak, but steady. His words send a chill through her. Xyra straightens. She wants to ask why, but something in the way he looks at her tells her she will not like the answer. Whatever he was meant to be, whatever purpose he served, it was never meant to be found, and now it is too late to turn back. Xyra watches as the human forces himself upright, his body still weak, but his movements controlled, deliberate. His muscles tremble from atrophy, but his eyes remain sharp, taking in every detail of the ruined ship, the dead consoles, the faded murals, the air so still it feels like a tomb. She sees the calculations running through his mind, the way he grips the edge of the pod, his fingers curling, as if bracing for something he already knows is coming. "You should not have woken me." His voice is rough, but steady. Xyra swallows hard, trying to ignore the way her instincts scream at her to step back. She squares her shoulders, forcing herself to hold his gaze while she asks, her voice quiet but firm. He exhales a slow, bitter breath, "Because now they will know I am alive." Her stomach tightens as she asks, already dreading the answer. He does not respond immediately. Instead, he pushes himself away from the pod, testing his legs, wobbling slightly, but refusing to fall. Xyra watches as he reaches for a panel on the wall, pressing a sequence with practiced ease. The ship groans around them, something deep within its core struggling to respond. A faint hum fills the air, ancient systems flickering to life for the first time in centuries, holographic displays stuttering with unreadable data. The human scans the information, his expression darkening. As he processes what little remains of the ship's logs, Xyra steps forward, trying to see what he sees. Her suit feeds her a translation, but most of the data is corrupted, unreadable, lost to time. "What happened here?" she demands, her voice sharp, and now her fear and uncertainty hardening into something else, determination. The human turns to her, his gaze unreadable, his expression shadowed by something heavier than exhaustion. "The war," he says simply, and suddenly the room feels colder. Xyra stiffens. She knows the war that ended before her people rose to power, the war that wiped humanity from existence. But no one speaks of it, no one knows what truly happened, only that her kind survived and the humans did not. Except now, she is staring at one living, breathing, standing before her and telling her that the story she has always known is a lie. Her comm crackles, static filling her earpiece. She stiffens, glancing at her wrist display. Incoming transmission restricted channel. The fleet has detected her location. She knew this would happen. She was too close. For too long, too many unauthorized scans. The patrols will be here soon. She turns back to the human, her mind racing. If they find him, if they find this ship, it will be erased. Everything she has seen, everything she has learned, it will vanish into classified files, never to be spoken of again. She knows this because she has seen it before. Wreckage disappearing, missing patrol logs, wiped clean secrets buried beneath layers of deception. "We have to leave," she says, urgency rising in her voice. The human does not look surprised, just tired, as if he knew this moment would come. He takes one last glance around the room, then nods, staggering forward. Xyra moves to support him. He does not push her away, but she feels the tension in his body, the way he forces himself to rely on his own strength, despite the struggle. As they reach the exit, the ship shudders around them, its old systems, failing sparks flickering from broken panels. The air is thick, with dust, the scent of metal and decay. Xyra's ship waits in the hangar, sleek and small, compared to the towering wreck that was once a war machine. She helps a human inside, sealing the airlock behind them, powering the engines. She does not look back as they lift off. She does not want to see what is left of history crumbling into darkness. The human watches the wreckage shrink on the view screen, his face unreadable. Xyra wants to ask him 100 questions, but there is no time. The fleet will be here soon, and when they arrive, they will not be looking for answers, they will be looking for silence. Xyra grips the controls, her ship accelerating away from the wreckage. Her fingers fly over the navigation panel, setting a course away from the fleet's patrol zone. Her sensors flash red, multiple incoming signals. They are already here. The fleet moves fast, too fast. They must have been tracking her longer than she realized. Her stomach tightens. Her people do not take risks. When it comes to unknowns, they will search, they will find the human, and they will erase him. The human watches the incoming signals, his expression unreadable, but his hands grip the seat, his breathing steady. He does not ask where they are going, he does not panic. Instead, he watches her, waiting, calculating, his mind working through possibilities. She can feel the weight of his gaze, but she does not turn to meet it. "They cannot catch us," she mutters, mostly to herself. Her ship is fast, built for maneuverability, but the fleet is relentless. She needs to think, needs to act before they lock onto her trajectory. She skims through the star maps, searching for an escape route, but every option is dangerous, either too exposed or too far for her fuel reserves. He leans forward, his voice still rough but steady. "Show me the map." She hesitates only for a second, then flicks the display toward him. His eyes scan the data quickly, faster than she expects. He does not ask about new territories or recent changes. He moves with confidence, like someone who already knows where they are going. "Here," he says, pointing to a sector deep in the outskirts. She frowns. "That system is unstable, barely mapped. My people never go there." "Exactly," he replies. A pulse of unease runs through her. She does not know if she can trust him, but she knows she cannot trust the fleet. She adjusts their course, the ship veering sharply, her engines flaring as they push toward the unknown. The incoming signals shift, some pursuing others, breaking off, searching the wreck for whatever secrets it holds. But Xyra already knows they will find nothing, only dead metal and silence. The human exhales slowly, his body still weak, but his mind sharp. He turns to her, his gaze finally meeting hers. "You do not believe what they told you, do you?" Xyra stiffens, gripping the controls tighter. She does not answer, not right away. She was raised on history that painted humans as reckless, as dangerous, as the architects of their own destruction. And yet everything she has seen, everything she has heard tells her another story. "I do not know what to believe," she admits quietly. He nods as if he expected, but he leans back in his seat, exhaling slowly. "The war was not what they told you," he says, his voice low. "They did not erase us because we were a threat. They erased us because we were the only ones who could stop what is coming." Her pulse quickens. "What do you mean?" He does not answer right away. Instead, he stares out at the stars, his expression unreadable. "There are things older than your empire, older than my people, things that do not care who wins or who rules, only that the stars keep burning for them." His voice is quieter, now heavier. "When they realized we knew the truth, they did not fight us, they erased us." Xyra swallows hard the implications, settling in her chest like cold iron. Everything she was taught, everything she believed, was built on a lie. The fleet does not just rule, they control history itself. She turns back to the controls, pushing her ship faster, her mind racing with possibilities. If what he says is true, then she is no longer just a rogue pilot with a secret. She is carrying a spark of something much more dangerous. The human closes his eyes, resting, but she knows he is not asleep. He is thinking, planning, waiting for what comes next. And as the void stretches ahead of them, Xyra realizes she is doing the same. Xyra keeps her eyes locked on the starfield ahead. The ship hums around her engines, straining against the limits of their speed. The fleet is behind them for now, but she knows they will not stop searching, not until they are caught, or until they vanish completely into the unknown. The human sits silently beside her, his breathing steady, his body still weak, but his mind sharp. She can feel his presence like a storm held in check, waiting to break. She glances at him, unable to hold back the question burning inside her. If what you say is true, then what were you fighting? What was so dangerous that they erased you? His eyes remain on the viewport, his expression distant, but his voice is steady when he speaks. We call them the Devourers, he says. The first time we encountered them, they were just shadows in deep space, anomalies that consumed everything they touched. Stars, planets, entire civilizations gone without a trace. We thought it was a natural phenomenon until we found what was left behind. Xyra frowns. Left behind? What could survive something like that? He turns to her, then his gaze sharp, his voice colder than before. The ones who worship them. Her breath catches in her throat. The idea sends a shiver down her spine. She has heard of cults, rogue factions that break from civilization, seeking power in the unknown. But nothing like this, nothing that could align with something capable of devouring stars. When we realized what they were, we fought. He continues, humanity was never the strongest, never the fastest, never the most advanced. But we were the most stubborn. We did not run, we did not kneel. We found ways to hurt them, to stop them. And that was when your people turned against us. Xyra grips the controls tighter, her heart pounding. What are you saying? His expression darkens. When we fought them, we were winning not through strength, but through knowledge, strategy, adaptation. We were learning how to destroy them permanently. But someone in your empire decided that was too dangerous. Not just the enemy, but us, our knowledge, our defiance, our refusal to fall in line. They erased us, not because we were losing, but because we were winning. Xyra shakes her head, her mind reeling. Her people have always spoken of humanity as reckless, chaotic, a civilization that burned too brightly and collapsed under its own weight. But if what he says is true, then they did not collapse. They were crushed, buried, rewritten into history as a cautionary tale. Then why are you here? She demands. Why are you the last? The human exhales, slowly staring back out into the void. I was meant to be a failsafe, he says. If they ever returned, if the war was not truly over, my ship was hidden, buried in deep space, waiting for someone to find it, waiting for the moment when the truth would matter again. Xyra swallows hard, because she knows what he is saying without saying it. The war is not over. The Devourers are still out there, and now she is caught in something far bigger than herself. Before she can respond, the alarms scream through the cabin, her sensors flashing red, multiple signals, incoming, too many to be a coincidence. She curses, checking the readings, her pulse hammering. It is not the fleet, it is something else, something darker, something cold. The human sees it too, his expression tightening as he leans forward, his voice quiet but urgent. That is them. Xyra's blood runs cold. The Devourers are here. Xyra's hands move fast over the controls, her mind racing as the warning lights flash across her console. The readings make no sense. No radio signals, no identifiable energy signatures, only the overwhelming presence of something massive moving in the void. It is not the fleet. She has seen their pursuit patterns before, methodical, calculated, predictable. This is different. This is something ancient, something wrong. The human leans forward, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the screens, his eyes sharp, his expression unreadable. His body is still weak, but his mind is clear. He knows what is coming. He has seen it before. Xyra can feel it in the way he watches the readings, his jaw tight, his fingers curling against the armrest. How do we fight this? She asks, her voice steady despite the dread crawling up her spine. His response is immediate. You do not fight, you run. Zoran's muscles tensed, her instincts scream against retreat. She has spent her life pushing against the limits, against rules, against expectations. But something in the human's voice, in the way he does not look away from the screen, tells her, this is not about bravery, this is about survival. She yanks the throttle hard, spinning the ship into a sharp, evasive maneuver, her engines flare heat and light pouring into the void as she angles toward the outer edges of the system. If she can put enough distance between them, if she can reach a gravity, well, she might be able to slingshot away, break free, vanish into deep space before whatever is coming can close in. But then the shadows move. Her sensors flicker, static pulses. Through her displays, her star maps twist and distort, and then for the first time she sees them, not just as sensor anomalies, not just as warnings, but as shapes, massive and shifting bodies that should not exist. They are not ships, they are not creatures, they are something between both, something that does not obey the rules of matter or space. Her breath catches her pulse, hammers cold and sharp against her ribs. Her entire body locks up, every instinct screaming to move, to flee, to do anything but stare. But she cannot look away. They are not just consuming space around them, they are unraveling it. The human does not react in fear, does not flinch. He watches them with a grim certainty, his voice low and steady. Keep moving, do not stop, do not let them touch you. Xyra tears her gaze from the viewport, her hands flying across the controls. She does not need to be told twice. She burns the engines, hard pushing her ship to the limit, twisting through space at impossible speeds. But the devourers do not chase, they do not need to, they are already here, they are already everywhere. A deep hum vibrates through the ship, not from her engines, not from anything mechanical. It is inside her mind, inside her bones, a soundless pressure, pushing against reality. Her vision blurs for a second, time stretches, warps. She grits her teeth, fighting against the sensation, fighting to keep control. How do you stop something that is not bound by the laws of physics? Her ship jolts, the temperature drops, the screens flicker, her thrusters stutter for a fraction of a second. Something is trying to pull her in. The human reacts fast, his body still weak, but his movements precise. He reaches across the consoles, slamming a sequence of commands. She does not recognize her ship, shudders, her screens flicker again. And then suddenly they break free, the shadows recede, the hum vanishes, the pressure lifts, as if something just let go. Xyra gasps, her hands gripping the controls so tightly her knuckles turn white. She whips around, staring at the human. What did you do? His breathing is heavy, but his expression remains cold, calculated, a failsafe. He says nothing more. She turns back to the screens. The devourers have not vanished, they still loom in the void, but they are no longer pulling at her ship, no longer distorting her systems. It is as if something has changed, some rule she does not understand has shifted. Xyra clenches her jaw. She has too many questions, but no time to ask them. She pushes the engines harder, forcing the ship beyond its limits, racing toward the far edge of the system where the devourers do not reach. But she knows they are not gone, and worse, she knows they let her go on purpose. Xyra does not slow down. The ship hums, with strained metal groaning against the force of acceleration. But she does not dare ease up, not when the devourers still linger at the edges of space, not when she can still feel their presence, pressing against her thoughts like cold fingers, tracing the edges of her mind. She risks a glance at the human. His breathing is steady, but his expression is carved from stone, unreadable, unshaken, as if he has been here before, as if he has seen worse. What did you do? She asks again, her voice sharp. She needs answers, she needs to understand, because whatever he just activated, whatever failsafe he used, it should not have worked. Nothing should be able to break free from the devourers. Nothing should be able to make them stop. He exhales slowly, his gaze locked on the viewport, his fingers curling against the armrest. I used a key, he says flatly, something built into my ship long ago, a command buried deep in its systems, not a weapon, not an attack, just something that makes them hesitate. Xyra's stomach twists. Hesitation. The devourers do not hesitate, they consume, they unravel, they erase entire civilizations, entire histories. If they hesitated, there was a reason she is not sure, she wants to know. What are they really? She asks. She has read the records, the whispers in hidden data files, ancient anomalies, unexplainable forces. But no one truly knows the truth. No one has survived long enough to learn. The human finally looks at her, his gaze sharp. "You're asking the wrong question." Xyra frowns. "What do you mean?" His fingers tighten against the armrest. "The question is not what are they, the question is why do they let some things live?" The words send a chill down her spine, because she knows what he means. Her people survived, they rose after humanity fell, they expanded, they conquered, they thrived, while humans were erased from existence. If the Devourers are as unstoppable as he says, if they are the true force behind what happened, then why did her kind remain untouched? Her mouth goes dry. She wants to deny it, wants to tell him that her people fought, that they earned their place, that they were not spared by something beyond their control. But deep down, she already knows the truth. The Empire did not rise. Because it was stronger, it rose, because it was allowed to. The ship jolts, alarms, flashing across the console. Xyra snaps her focus back to the controls, her sensors, picking up something new, something fast incoming. It is not the Devourers, it is the fleet. Xyra curses, her mind spinning. They must have tracked her jump, must have predicted her trajectory. They are closing in fast. Her ship is already strained, already at its limit. She does not have the power to outrun them, not with a passenger, not with a ship that was never meant to fight a war. The human watches the readings, his expression unreadable. "They cannot have me," he says simply. Xyra tightens her grip on the controls. She knows what will happen if they capture him. They will not just kill him, they will erase him, wipe him from history, the same way they did before, the same way they always do with things they fear. She has spent her life bending rules, pushing against the edges of what is allowed. But this is something else. This is betrayal, this is treason. This is a choice that cannot be undone. The fleet hails her, demanding she stop, demanding she surrender. Xyra exhales, her decision already made. She grips the controls and dives straight toward the unknown. Xyra's hands are steady as she grips the controls, her heart pounding, but her mind clear. The fleet closes in their formation, tightening like a net. Her senses flash warning after warning. They are locking weapons, locking trajectory, preparing to cut off every possible escape route. Surrender is not an option, not anymore. The human watches silently, his expression unreadable. But she knows he understands. He has seen this before, lived it before. He does not ask what she plans to do, does not tell her to stop, because he knows she will not. He knows she has already chosen. Xyra pushes the ship harder. Heat ripples through the hull, the engines screaming under the strain. The fleet sends another hail, demanding she power down, demanding she comply, demanding she give up. But Xyra has never been one to obey orders. She has never been one to kneel. Her mind races through options. She has no weapons that can break their blockade, no tricks that can fool their senses, no allies that can pull her out of this. But she has one thing they do not. She has the human, and whatever knowledge he carries, whatever failsafe he activated against the Devourers, whatever secrets he holds. She glances at him. He meets her gaze. No words pass between them, but she knows he understands. She adjusts course, hard banking the ship toward the outer edges of the system, where space bends, where gravity distorts, where the Devourers still lurk. She sees it on the fleet scanners. Hesitation, the brief flicker of uncertainty. They are not afraid of her, they are not afraid of the human, but they are afraid of what waits beyond. The fleet hails her again, their voices sharp. "Xyra, stop, you do not understand what you are doing. Do not take him, they do not let him reach them." But Xyra knows that is a lie. She understands now. She understands more than they ever wanted her to. They are not afraid of what the human will do to them. They are afraid of what he will awaken. She pushes the engines to their limits, plasma burning bright against the void, her ship rattling under the strain. The fleet scrambles to adjust, to follow, to stop her before she crosses the threshold. But they are too late. She is already there. She is already past the point of no return. The shadows move. Her sensors flicker, the deep hum vibrates through the ship. Space itself stretches, warts, twists around them. The Devourers are waiting, watching. Xyra does not slow, she does not falter. The human exhales, his fingers tightening against the seat, his voice calm. "Even now, we have one chance. If they let us go before, they will let us go again." Xyra swallows hard, "And if they do not?" "Then we die," he says simply. The fleet hesitates. They have seen what happens to ships that cross this boundary. They know they cannot follow. They are bound by rules. They do not understand rules. They cannot break rules that Xyra herself only now begins to grasp. The devourers loom in possibly vast shapes. Moving within the darkness reality bends, Xyra feels something pressing against her mind, her soul, something ancient, something endless. She grips the controls, steadying herself. She will not kneel, she will not beg. The ship shudders, light fractures, shadows coil, but they do not consume her, they do not erase her. They let her pass. The fleet remains frozen behind the boundary, powerless, unable to follow, unable to stop what has already begun. Xyra exhales, her pulse, slowing her mind, still reeling. The human leans back, his eyes closing. For the first time he looks at peace. It is not over, he says, but it has begun. Xyra does not know what waits beyond, does not know what she has truly set in motion, but for the first time in her life, she is not running, she is not afraid. For the first time in her life, she is free.